Is homeschooling the answer? I already know I'm gonna get a lot of hate from this, but actually, no. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my homeschool families, but is homeschooling in itself the answer? No. And the reason why is because generally people will do homeschooling in a couple of ways. One being they'll just do school at home, and that misses the entire point of homeschooling. And a lot of homeschoolers will tell you that as well. Doing school at home is not what you're supposed to be doing with homeschooling, because we already know school is not the answer. School in itself is not even education. School is not a real education anyway. It's educated just enough to conform to society. The whole purpose of school, if you really look into the history of it, is to create a society of employees, essentially. It was done by those who were in power, in control, who had interests that were more corporate interests, and they were looking for employees and consumers. And so they were able to create that in large with the schooling system. Look at how many people come out of the schooling system, and the vast majority of them go to work for another company. It's even been said by President Woodrow Wilson, look, we're not looking to create any sort of artists or doctors or any of that with school. What we're looking for is employees. We just need the working class. And so that's what school is, right? And so doing school at home is not the answer. But then the flip side of that is a lot of times some parents will do the opposite of school at home, meaning a reaction to school, meaning instead of doing what they got in school, which generally speaking, school forces you to go through a specific curriculum that you have to follow. It's very rigid. And if you don't fall within these specific lines, you're failed, regardless of whether you're really intelligent or far behind where they expect you to be. Steve Jobs was known to be way ahead of where he was supposed to be, and they absolutely hated him in school. He was years ahead of his peers, and he gave his teachers trouble. He played pranks on the teachers, and the teachers basically did not want him to be there. One teacher did well with him, he said in his biography, right? He said that there's one teacher who gave him a book and showed him a lollipop and said, if you can complete this entire textbook, I will give you this lollipop. And he completed it within like a month or so. And so then she had to find other creative ways to keep his attention, right? But even Steve Jobs, someone that our society regards as like a very creative individual, very intelligent individual, had trouble in school because he didn't fit within the rigid lines of what's expected. Now, here's the other thing that school does. And I know we're talking about is homeschooling the answer, and I'm talking a lot about school, but I'm putting in some context because a lot of what happens in homeschool is a reaction to school or school at home. And so instead of having these rigid lines at home, what a lot of families I've seen personally will do is they'll take this approach where they say, well, we're just gonna let the child decide. And child-led learning is a lot of fun and can be really great. It's an amazing tool. However, if the child doesn't feel like learning anything at all, I've seen a lot of families allow their children to just play video games all day, or watch movies all day, or just draw all day. And there's nothing wrong with drawing and being creative. However, the unfortunate thing about that is if you're allowing your child to, let's say, just watch movies or play video games all day, but they're not actually learning anything outside of that, then they're being influenced by a company whose sole interest is to get more money out of you as the parent and from that child as well, to continue to hold on to their interest and their attention and continue drawing them in. It's just like we've seen so many people on social media, they'll do that death scroll where they're just scrolling and scrolling, and you can see from the outside, it's like, you're not even here. But that's what we're allowing to happen to our children at a very young age if we just allow them to just sit and watch TV, watch any sort of advertising, just watch movies, or just play video games. That's what those are designed to do, to grab their attention and hold their attention for as long as possible, to get them to want to consume more and more and more, and even shell out some money in order to do so. Is homeschooling the answer? No. Is doing school at home the answer? No. Is not doing any sort of education at home, but just what the child is interested, the answer? No. There needs to be a lot of education at home. It does not need to be hours and hours and hours of formal education. Education can be cooking. It can be doing chores around the house. It can be learning about so many different things, so many different topics, and it can be done in so many different contexts as well. But education doesn't just stop with the academics, and that is where so many people fall. Their idea of education only has to do with math, or only has to do with language arts, or only has to do with science. And those things are important. However, there is so much more. Why doesn't our education include how we interact with this world? Include having solutions for the problems that we find in this world? Because so many people end up going through our education system, whether that be school or homeschooling or no education at all, but they end up fitting right back into the system, meaning they end up doing the same thing. In fact, if school's purpose is just to create employees, and at home, all you're doing is preparing your child to have a job, well, you haven't done much of anything that different. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of advantages to homeschooling. You don't get the same sort of trauma that most children go through when they go to school. But there are other traumas that people will say they get from homeschooling, depending on their environment. But again, that's because homeschooling in itself is not the key. The key, the solution, is really educating oneself beyond just get a job and survive. It's the same education that we've gotten in school, in basically everywhere we go in our society. And so there is something beyond that. Homeschool can be more than just academics. It can be the practical understanding of how to interact with life, and it should be. But also that includes the practical walking of interacting with your children in the very best way. That includes preparing them for life, actually, not just preparing them for a job, but preparing them for relationships, preparing them for how to interact with this world to create real solutions for this world, preparing them for actually understanding everything that they're capable of, reaching their full potential. If their potential, or if your understanding of how they should learn or be educated is limited to them just getting a job or even them just making money, it's limited. They could be so much more. They could have so much more. And that's what we're creating right now in some of the groups that I'm a part of. We're creating families who have children who are very highly intelligent, but their children aren't being prepared to just have a job. That's not to say if they want to do something like become an engineer of some sort or an artist of some sort, that they can't do that. In fact, a lot of these kids do paint or draw or create music or do very creative things, and they're very good at it as well. But that's not their main focus. It's not their sole focus. They learn a lot of math, they learn a lot of reading, they learn a lot about the world around them, but they're also being supported to understand that they can make a huge impact in this world, actually, and what that actually looks like. And then practicing steps towards that, meaning creating a world that's best for everyone, creating a world where these problems get solved, creating a world where we can see solutions, actual solutions, and practicing with their persuasion, their negotiation, their understanding of other people's arguments, understanding other people's viewpoints, and understanding what's best within that. And so Is school the answer? Heck no. Is homeschool the answer? We're getting closer, but that's not all the answer. There's more than just learning academics at home. There's a whole world more. And I'm making this message to reach out to those who want to go beyond just preparing to survive, beyond just preparing to fit into a job, but actually want to prepare yourselves and your children to live in an amazing world, one that we've helped impact and influence to be the very best that it can be.